For someone out here who's just trying to manage their fleet, it's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to understand artificial intelligence. But you don't need to dig into the weeds on how it exactly works in order to understand how you can use it as a tool. When you're a major truck leasing and logistics company like Penske Transportation Solutions, you have to stay ahead of the latest technology, whether that's zero emissions trucks, autonomous vehicles, data analytics, or artificial intelligence. And it's that last one we're going to talk about today, artificial intelligence. I'm Deborah Lockridge. I'm editor and associate publisher at Heavy Duty Trucking. And joining me today are Tim Haynes and Sam Thompson. Tim is Vice President of Digital and Customer Data for Penske Transportation Solutions, and Sam is Vice President of Customer Success and Fleet Telematics, so we can get a couple different perspectives on AI. And this episode of Leadership Insights is produced in partnership with and sponsored by Penske Transportation Solutions. So, welcome, Sam and Tim. Good to have you here. Let's start off and talk a little bit more broadly about artificial intelligence. Are there types of things that, in general, that AI is especially good at doing?
So I think maybe to start with is people have been using AI in multiple formats for many years. Your smartphone, streaming recommendations for music and television, task automation are examples of people using AI every day and not really thinking about it. It's also very good at looking at large quantities of data and to make sense out of it. So when you look at all the just from a streaming perspective, all the different choices that people have, what they make, that's where AI comes in and can say, okay, what's really popular? What are people using? And it also does a very good job of forecasting. I mean, when you listen to the Weather Channel, you see and hear people talking about models and where they think the weather is going to go and what's going to happen. That's all based on AI. But AI needs care and feeding, and it also needs a lot of good data being fed into it. And so it's an ongoing process. It's a learning process, but it's learned and tuned by people. So it's not a matter of this is going to I'll say replace people, but it's the processing of large quantities of data, and it's in our everyday life now.
Sam, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would agree with everything Tim just said, but also the best AI is very subtle. It's just under the surface, it's behind the scenes, it's doing exactly what Tim talked about. It's driving automation, it's helping you to sift through mounds of data, it's helping human beings be more efficient, if you will.
So we've heard more about AI, I think, the last year or two because of sort of new kinds of AI like ChatGPT. Any insights there as to why that's become such a hot topic?
I think a little bit of a new shiny thing syndrome. Like Tim said, AI has been in our lives for quite a bit of time. And again, the best sorts of AI are subtle or behind the scenes. AI is being used on your phone day to day. AI is being used, like you said, by to predict or determine what weather patterns are going to be. But yeah, I think a lot of it is new shiny thing syndrome. The latest technology got very buzzy, and this one company, I know you used the ChatGPT example, but lots of folks were working on generative AI and language models and so on for a number of years. But they made some progress and made it a little bit more user friendly, and it got more exposure to the masses, and it became very approachable. And then that's where kind of this race started with all these other big tech companies. It's like, ooh, they've got something shiny. We've got to do it too, even though they've been doing it for quite some time. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a leveling out with respect to AI before it actually becomes even more like tangible, if you will, because a lot of it is, I don't want to say slideware, but chasing that new shiny thing and getting people a little fired up. Maybe when we all should have a little caution and just kind of evaluate what we've got right now.
All right. Like you said, the best AI kind of just works in the background. We've been looking at, I guess some of these things people are looking at more in the foreground, but that doesn't stop the concept of all this working in the background to help people. So then getting more specifically into how does all that translate into some of the ways that AI can help in managing trucking fleets. For instance, one place I've been hearing about, and I think this is a place we've talked about, as you said, for years, is in the shop, where we've been talking about like predictive analytics, predictive maintenance for quite some time. How's AI helping there?
Sam, you want to take that or you want me to jump in?
Go for it, and I'll jump in right behind you. Yeah.
So with the shop and with the analytics and what's happening with the trucks, um, lots of vehicles, lots of miles on the roads, lots of mechanical parts going on or happening within or building the truck, and lots of things happening within there. And with all the ability to collect data now, we've got large amounts of it that's coming in. And how do you sift through that? And how do we make it so that the technicians working on the vehicles know what's happening? So again, coming back to the AI, you're sifting through large chunks of data and looking at what are the patterns, what's happening within the vehicle. Someone in our business years ago said he imagined a time when the truck could tell you when it was sick. That's kind of what's happening right now when you look at it, because it's the data's coming in. It's like, oh, we've got this fault for this one thing happening in the engine. We're getting that information in near real time in certain instances. And we can start saying, with our expertise, start taking that and looking at the patterns with AI, sifting through it and saying, you know what, you need to get your truck in the next 500 miles because otherwise it might break down. So the ability to predict and be proactive about it and talk to our customers and say, hey, you know what, you're going to be by one of our shops in the next couple of weeks. Get your truck in, set up a time. We can fix it before it breaks. And that also helps with scheduling. It helps with downtime. It helps with customer satisfaction. I mean, all these intangible assets that come out of being able to tell a customer, hey, the truck that you're using and that you've been using for the last 6 months, and let's get it in, let's get it fixed before it breaks. So that for us is that's where we've been looking at the proactive diagnostics for a while.
And Sam, how does this help the technicians in the shop?
Absolutely. And just to kind of put a fine point on what Tim talked about for proactive, we've been using AI for quite a bit at Penske, again, behind the scenes, right? There's a great application for it to be used in transportation and fleet management, specifically around maintenance. We were responsible for over 400,000 pieces of equipment, and we've been turning wrenches and fixing trucks for well over 50 years in our business. And that's a lot of learning and know-how. And helping us to be able to capture what the issue was, how we took care of it, and so on. Being able to sort through all that information and put that into these machine learning and algorithms to allow us to say, hey, these things are imminent, is allowing us to stay a lot more ahead of maintenance challenges so that we can avoid any unplanned downtime with our customers, and also filter through the noise. A lot of people talk about predictive maintenance, but they're sending customers or their end customers a lot of stuff, and the customers aren't quite sure what to do with it. We pinpoint the actual pain and issue and say, this is what's urgent. Here's what we need to focus on, and bring your vehicle into the shop. Once we get into the shop, another area that we've been using AI for, again, a number of years is what we call guided repair. So again, our technicians get the best training and the best technology, but even they could use a little bit of help with, hey, let me focus in on the right spot on this truck and make the right repair. Other people have already done this. So let me hone in, let me be guided and get the play-by-play on where this vehicle needs my attention. You can leverage the same sort of technology for PMs as well. Do the right PM on the right truck at the right time versus some standardized one. Let AI drive how this technician should care for this vehicle, where he should focus his attention, and jump right into the repair versus kind of going through all this troubleshooting and diagnostic. It's already been done. I know what's happening. Here's what you do. This is the tool and part you need. Fix this.
What about beyond the shop? What are some other ways that AI is being used by fleets?
So there's a number of ways that fleets are using AI, but there's still, if I'm being honest with you, a lot of transportation companies or fleets in general are still getting comfortable with it. They still don't quite understand AI. There's still a lot of concern and maybe some fear around AI. But as they're getting more acclimated, and as their telematics providers and fleet management solutions and so on are starting to put it into the tools, again, in a non-threatening way, something that's very subtle, that can help do the things that Tim talked about at the top of the call. Being able to plan your routes more efficiently, being able to stay on top of your maintenance for your vehicles, whether you're, leveraging the platforms to kind of see what your spend is or when it's time to bring in things in for PMs and so on. It's really just helping the human beings be more efficient, like we talked about. It takes quite a bit of data to manage a fleet. So how do I wrangle all of that data and pinpoint where I should focus my efforts and attention to keep my vehicles up and running? Because that's ultimately what this is all about. Everything we do is to drive uptime.
And I think we touched, or Sam's touched on it a couple of times, and it's using the data, but it's not independent. AI is not going off and doing something and then it's acted on. It's in conjunction with people. And it goes back to the experience, and it goes back to how we apply that knowledge. It's a tool. It's another tool. So when you look at how AI is being used, it's being used throughout the business, not just our business, not just transportation, but it's being used pretty much in everyday life as another tool. And it's that subtle use of it, but it's also being used with people and putting eyes on it and saying, does this make sense? And that practical application and the practical knowledge combined with it is where the power really comes in. It's getting you to be able to do things faster and more accurately and adding the value where you need to for the business.
And I know from talking to fleets for years that all the data available today it's like a fire hose. So, right? What do I do with it? How do I make this actionable? And it seems like AI is kind of helping to be able to sift through all that data and make some of it, figure out what we're going to do with it. What's this tool? So speaking of tools, earlier this year, Penske launched an AI-driven platform to help fleets use that real-time data for benchmarking and identifying opportunities where they could improve. Tell us a little bit about that.
So before Catalyst was launched early this year, if people wanted a benchmark, they would go to the industry standards, and PTC would have something that says, okay, Class 8 vehicles get 6.5 miles per gallon on average. But my fleet's running 6, or my fleet's running 7, or is that good or bad? I'm looking at this aggregate average. How do I understand how I'm doing against companies that are running like I am, either where I'm running or what kind of load I'm carrying? And so what we've done with Catalyst is we take a look at multiple dimensions of what makes up a fleet and create almost a fingerprint or a DNA of that fleet, and then go out and match how that fleet is set up and operating against other like fleets, and now create a benchmark that says, okay, fleets that are running similar to yours, and it could be by location, it could be by type of trip, it could be parts of the country, it could be, like I said, it's multiple dimensions. And we find a match that's close enough that we are confident that we're now getting to a much more of an apples to apples comparison. Being able to put that in front of a fleet, and a fleet manager in particular, if they're carrying a heavy load in the plain states versus a heavy load in the mountains, you're going to have two completely different operational challenges, different MPG, different, wear and tear on the vehicles. Now they're actually getting to that apples to apples comparison. They can say, you know what, I'm doing better, I'm doing worse. What do I have to do to get better? And being able to see what other fleets are set up like will help them kind of, okay, what do I have to do to tweak things? I'm already great. Perfect. I'm not doing so well. All right, where can I improve? Catalyst helps point you in that direction to say, here's the levers I can pull as a fleet manager to help me operate my fleet better.
And Sam, what are you seeing there with the Catalyst AI?
Very much along the same lines of what Tim mentioned, is customers are very grateful for having that fine-tuned ability to sift through all the noise. Again, those benchmarking reports, which we're very happy to sponsor, getting that true apples to apples comparison, there's nothing like it out there, and it's real time as well. That's something to talk about as well. It's dynamic. It's not a static benchmark that comes out once a year. this information is refreshed on a regular basis, and it's pulling this all together so I can pinpoint where I need to focus my attention. Our customers are starting to implement this in some interesting ways. They're able to track some seasonality in their fleet and kind of see how that is comparing to other fleets that are very similar to them. So if I'm, for example, have a surge in my business because of the holiday season coming up, what does that mean for my business, and how are other fleets kind of managing that? Like, is there going to be a change in utilization for me? Is there going to be an impact on MPG? Maybe my drivers are idling more because it's cold outside. Maybe, I'm using more of my equipment because I've got more packages delivered, whatever the case may be. Our customers are starting to use the features that we've put in front of them in a very thoughtful way to change behaviors and habits within their business, and that's helping them to be more efficient from an operator standpoint.
And efficiency is kind of the name of the game. So I know as I've been learning about AI, talking to fleets who are working with starting to use it, one of the challenges I'm hearing is that they might have problems with the data, the quality of it, the cleanliness of the data that AI needs to keep working the way it should. Why is that a problem, and what can fleets do about it?
So when you're building a model using AI, you're modeling something. You're taking data. If your data is not clean, if it's got anomalies in there, if it's dirty, if it's got wrong information in there, your model is going to be flawed to begin with. So it really does come from looking at data and saying, is this the right quality? And then starting to see what are the patterns and how do I pull this together? And now starting to do that and build that at scale. And it takes a lot of data. Just to put that, we get hundreds of millions of messages from our trucks every single day. We run over 45,000 checks on that data as it's coming in every single day. So it's being able to look at, is this the data that we expect? Is it within the ranges that we expect it to be in? If it's not, what's happening? And if you don't do that, if you don't take the care and the time to set up your data appropriately, your model is going to be inherently flawed. That's where a lack of trust, that's where some of the questions come in about what's going on with AI, or I can't trust it. And so by building out that model and understanding what is that data really telling me and what are the right values, and then ensuring that you're only using things that are right. And right meaning, if your GPS location, so where your truck is, should not tell you it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That would be an anomalous, and that does happen because you're going through different zones. You'll have dead zones with the trucks. They're trying to get satellite information, and it could be pinpointed. You have to have at least 3 to triangulate to find out where something is. And if one of those isn't reading properly, all of a sudden you'll get a data point that says you're going down one road, and next one says you're in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Well, that's not really going to happen unless you're on board a ship. But then it throws you back, and it's knowing to get rid of that data. And so you're really looking at what are the patterns, what are the expected values, and then building your model around that. And with that builds trust, because people start seeing, oh, wait, this really is what I expect. And it's taking all these pieces that used to take me 3 months to put together and doing it in 30 seconds. And that's where the power comes in. And that's why the cleanliness of the data is so important.
Sam, anything to add there?
Tim said it beautifully, but it's just going back to that old saying, whether it's AI or your database or what have you, garbage in, garbage out. Your data has to be, you have to have a good starting point, or else it's all going to fall apart on the other side of it. But circling back quickly to something you said earlier at the top of this call, we're talking a lot about data. Data is great, but by itself, it's just a lot of stuff, right? But what we've been doing intentionally with Penske, alongside of our views on practical innovation, is to turn data into information, but then make that information insights. Like, don't just give me a pile of data. That is too overwhelming for any one human being to just look at all this stuff. Focus my attention on the things that are most important and critical to me so that I can take action appropriately. But Tim said it just fine. Garbage in, garbage out.
I thought of saying that, but it's like, no.
It's true.
Yeah, it's
true.
It is true. For a long time, but it's just probably maybe more as more and more data is going into these models, it's more important than ever.
As we use these devices, the trucks and everything more, we generate more data, and which means you will always have anomalies. Things they aren't perfect. It just doesn't happen. So how do we get it as good as possible so that it meets our expectations as the user? And it keeps coming back to, it's not just about AI, it's about AI as a tool that helps people to do things. And that's part of that. How do you sift through all that information?
Sam, you'd mentioned earlier that fleets are starting to kind of try to get their arms around AI, and some wariness. What types of, I don't know, myths or misinformation or misconceptions do you see out there in the trucking world about AI?
I mean, not even just specifically to trucking. I mean, generally speaking, there's this fear or concern that AI is going to replace human beings, right? We're firmly in the camp of AI supporting and helping to enable and supercharge humans, making them more efficient, helping them to do tasks and streamline or automate things. But there's a lot of concern about, hey, is my job going to be redundant because AI? I think some jobs are going to get simplified. I think some parts of your job might get automated or replaced by it, but there's still a lot of human required and a lot of human participation in AI today. And I think we're a long ways from anyone being super concerned about AI completely removing humans from the equation.
Tim?
So you mentioned ChatGPT earlier and the hype around ChatGPT. And part of that was now taking AI tools that have been, as Sam put it, subtly in the background and putting it out there for a normal consumer to use. ChatGPT creates answers to questions, but what people found is, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And it's because it's just going out and grabbing information and pulling it together. And the thing that AI, I'll say it's used properly, and I mentioned it before, it's building trust. Not used properly, ChatGPT just grabbing information and mashing it together, that's where the humans come in and have to say that does or does not make sense. That's tuning the model. When we push things out to users without that knowledge and understanding, they're not trusting the information. They're not trusting what AI is doing or how it's working. Yet they've already trusted things that have been in their lives. So I think the misinformation and the misconception is that AI can't be trusted. It can be, but you have to make sure that model, the data, the tuning, and that human interaction, that passing that sniff test, that sanity check is, this is actually something that makes sense.
All right. Thanks again to Tim and Sam from Penske for these great insights on AI. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode of Leadership Insights. Make sure to subscribe to HDT's YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform for HDT Talks Trucking so you don't miss an episode of HDT Talks Trucking or Leadership Insights.